Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by Flexecharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Welcome to a new episode of the ChargePoint podcast. I'm Christophe from Flexecharge. And today we're exploring one of Europe's most dynamic and fast-evolving EV markets, Belgium. In 2024, Belgium reached a new milestone. Battery electric vehicles now make up 28.5% of new car registrations. That's 127,750 new BEVs on the road, which is a 37% jump from last year. The country is also rapidly expanding its charging infrastructure with more than 83,000 public charging points, up 72% year on year, and one of Europe's best vehicle-to-charger ratios. But the story goes far beyond passenger cars. Belgium is a strategic transit market for European transport companies, a crossroads for truck traffic moving between UK, France, the Netherlands, Germany, and Southern Europe. And with zero-emission zones coming fast and logistics firms pushing towards electrification, the eTruck market is starting to take off, bringing a new wave of challenges and opportunities to Belgium's EV landscape. So in this episode, I spoke with two fantastic guests. First, Kris Dierckx from TSG Group, who brings deep experience in delivering EV charging and high-power infrastructure for both passenger cars and heavy-duty transport. And Louis-Charles Mosseray from ELECTRA, one of Belgium's and Europe's fastest-scaling fast-charging networks, which is setting new standards for customer experience and innovation. Together, we unpack what makes Belgium such a unique market, from the role of leasing and government incentives to grid constraints and future-proofing infrastructure, and how public and private players are preparing to support both passenger EVs and the growing wave of electric trucks crisscrossing the country. So plug in and join us for an electrifying journey through Belgium's EV and eTruck ecosystem. And welcome to the first guest on this episode about the Belgium EV charging market. Welcome, Louis-Charles Mosseray from ELECTRA.
Thank you. Thank you, Christophe, for having me today.
Thank you for taking the time to drop by this virtual studio. So, as always, with all my guests, let's start with your backstory. So can you tell me and our audience, a bit about your background that led you to the position where you are today?
Sure. So I've always been passionate about energy markets, especially electricity and also mobility. I also like changing environments where there is speed and things are getting disrupted when new entrants are disrupting legacy players and creating innovative stories. Mm-hmm. So in 2022, I was living in Paris. At that time, I'm Belgian, but I was living in Paris. And I discovered ELECTRA, which was a booming startup in France that was started 1 year earlier in 2021, developing a fast charging network at that time only in France. And I was thinking, okay, there is a big match with my home country, Belgium, where there are lots of leasing cars and a lot of cars that were going to become electric and will have a need to charge. So I contacted the co-founders, Aurélien, Julien, Augustin of ELECTRA at the time in the summer of 2022 to discuss the opportunity to open the activities abroad in Brussels. And very quickly it was a match. They had also a strong will to go international on their roadmap. So in a couple of weeks we were there. I moved to Brussels and my family followed in early 23.
Nice. So it's also a bit about business and entrepreneurship here. So I'm really curious. So what can you just take us a bit through the pitch that you gave them? How did you convince them?
Yeah. So when I look at a company, usually I look at three things, right? So the market, the product, and the team. Mm-hmm. I thought they have an amazing product, a great team. They had a market in France, but what I told them is the market in Belgium was going to be even bigger in terms of growth and growth space. Mm-hmm. And I showed the figures, explained my experience of the market, and I think that helped.
Yeah, for sure. Given your background and the possibility back then, was it the first expansion abroad for them, Belgium?
Yes.
All right, good one. Well, then let's dive into concretely a bit more ELECTRA, though I think most audience know the name, but let's get a bit more details on the company. So tell us a bit about ELECTRA. What does it stand for? How is it unique? And what it does in the Belgian EV charging market concretely.
Sure. So ELECTRA is a fast charging pure player for electric cars. So we are actively developing a European network of fast charging stations with the main purpose to help anyone transition to electric mobility. So we don't want charging to be a pain. Charging can be very fast, can be very easy, reliable, convenient, affordable, and that's really what we want to bring. And we want to bring some fresh air in the charging industry by developing an innovative product with the best UX of the market.
Very clear, yeah. So concretely, did you have to change anything in the positioning or adapt a little bit when you went into the Belgian EV charging market?
Yes, indeed. So in Belgium, we have the specificity of having a lot of leasing cars. So most of the electric cars sold today in Belgium are actually cars that are offered by the employer to the employee. Usually they also offer a charging pass. So we had to adapt with it. And for example, one of the first features we launched that was very dedicated to the Belgian market is the possibility to add the charging pass in the ELECTRA app so that all Belgian users could also benefit from all the features available in the ELECTRA application to be able, for example, to open barrier to access parkings that were closed at night or book a station on a highway when you're not sure to be able to charge. Those are all features that were developed in-house by ELECTRA, available in its application. But since Belgians are using charging passes, we had to make the link between the two.
And the charging passes you mentioned, can you mention some of them for those who don't know maybe the market again? We're here to learn. So what kind of passes are we talking about here?
Yeah, so you have a lot of traditional passes by the legacy actors, I would say. So from Q8, Total, Shell, etc. And you have also distributors of passes that came with the emergence of electric cars like ChargeMap, for example. And usually you have those passes that we all need to connect to make sure that it's working correctly when on whatever station. So even if you have a Total pass, you can also charge at ELECTRA. If you have a ChargeMap pass, you can charge at any station, and that's made through different protocols, OCPP, OCPI, that make it possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what about the choice from ELECTRA on the payment terminals? Is it something? What's your philosophy with the payment terminals?
Yeah, so every single charger has a payment terminal. So we really want to avoid any friction for the customer to charge. And part of that is the payment system. We want to make sure that it's very easy for him or her to charge, whatever the way. Yeah. And payment terminals are part of it. That's also one of the specificities of Belgium. One of the things we had to adapt is to make sure it was compatible with Bon Contact, which is very used in Belgium, and something that is barely used in France.
And what is this Bon Contact?
So it's a debit card that is very much used in Belgium.
All right. Yeah, makes sense. I understand now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I really wanted to make this episode about the Belgian EV charging market because, Belgium has really accelerated. So it has emerged as a leader in electromobility in 2024, surpassing several countries, facing setbacks or slow progress. And I guess that was part of your pitch. I guess you had a good crystal ball when you went to the guys in Paris and pitched them a right market to bet on. So how has this evolution translated into the demand of public charging, right? Tell us a bit about this evolution in Belgium.
Yeah, so back in 2022, it's funny to think sometimes back about it, because I remember going to the first partners where we would install charging stations, and we still had those discussions about, but is it going to be electric? Why not hydrogen? Why not XYZ? And I think that testimony is the fact that the market was not yet that mature at the time. So at that time, there were still discussions on the way decarbonization of transportation would happen, whereas today it's quite obvious. So in 2022, I would say that we were quite early in the rollout. We had quite a few competitors that were active rolling out charging stations, but not very intensely doing it. It changed it quite significantly in 2023, where we started to also, let's say, break the chicken and egg issue of having a charging solution and having cars. And at least we hope to have participated in the movement. And now it's really much more into a very strong dynamic on both sides. So the growth of the electric park is more or less growing at the same pace as the number of chargers in Belgium. We have more or less 30 to 40% of cars that are sold today in Belgium, which are electric. And then also we see the park of charging stations growing at the same pace.
Yeah. Sounds like it's in tune, 30 to 40%. Yeah, that definitely sets Belgium in the top in Europe. Yeah, I mean, I can speak from Copenhagen here. We are a bit like, I guess, number 2 after Norway, so we can brag, but it's still impressive. Yeah, I think in Denmark it was like it was almost 80% last month. So there's no turning back at some point, right? So that's quite exciting.
We look at Denmark with a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, it's become quite a charging mecca. Yeah. So I was wondering. So, and how did you make some partnership, or have you done since then with car OEMs or big distributors of cars to say, if you sell a car, if you buy a car, you get 6 months free charging at ELECTRA or an extra pass or whatever. How do you try to connect with the car sales and connect them and bring them to your network?
Yeah. So the development in Belgium has been through 3 main steps, I would say. So the first one was really to get locations, to get the ground. So we have a team dedicated to identifying the right locations and going through a lease agreement. And the second team is more focused on building the stations more operationally from the moment the lease agreement is signed to the opening of the stations. And the third part is what you're mentioning, is more growth. And that's the third pillar we are getting more and more active in. So, of course, in 2022, when we had no network, that was not the priority. But now that we are number 1 and having more than 100 stations in Belgium, this is something we try to focus on. And this growth pillar translates in communication, marketing, partnerships, B2B, B2C, and all that different categories. And we indeed work with distributors. We work with fleets of cars. We have partnerships with Uber, with Bolt, with Taxiver, which is the largest private taxi fleet in Belgium. With whom then we have a privileged way of collaborating.
Clever, of course, yeah, absolutely. That's the steps. So when was the first station opened? Just to get a bit of history, timeline here. When was it?
July 2023.
Now, less than 24 months later, we got 100 stations.
Indeed.
Yeah. That's a rollout cadence that is quite good, I'll say. And in terms of consumer expectations, which I guess you also keep a finger on the pulse and really follow what are people expecting, how have the expectations of EV drivers changed over time the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I think it's evolving on one side. And the second aspect that's interesting is that there might have been a mismatch between what people think people expect and what people actually expect. For example, initially the question was, are there chargers? So that was aligned. I think everyone was like, okay, we need to have more chargers and we need to have more infrastructure. That was the first point. The second point was the affordability. So that was expected, at least from the CPO side. Okay, we need to have affordable charging for people to be able to charge. And the third one is reliable. reliability. And actually, we would have thought that the affordability was one of the most important aspects to focus on. But actually, when you see that already, that's still today 17% of the fast charging sessions fail, reliability is getting more and more to the priority. And that's really something we try to focus on. And we try to be extremely selective on our products, the hardware that we have, but also the software that we have built 100% in-house. So 1/3 of the 250 people working at ELECTRA are working on the software, making it better every day, and making sure that we go from the 17% of failed sessions down to 0. And that's really one of the most important aspects, and we see clients to be very selective at.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There can't be any profitability without super high reliability. That's for sure. Yeah. If we want to bridge from the early adopters to the early majority, there can't be too many fails. So people will give up, right, and hand back their car, say, forget about it. I want a plug-in hybrid, for sure. Yeah. Great. So let's be a bit even more concrete on the rollout and your kind of operations in Belgium. So from a CPO perspective, so what are or have been the biggest operational challenges in Belgium, over time?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. What we look at or what we need for ELECTRA to survive, let's say, are 3 aspects. We need 1, a location. 2, we need a business case that works with this location. And the 3rd, we need a grid connection. We need electricity to be able to run chargers on that location. For the first one, we are able to find locations. We had great partnerships with key accounts like Deleuze, Quick, Burger King that give us access to their ground. For the second part, it's our diligence and duty to make sure the business case works. It's getting more difficult because the electricity transportation and distribution costs are getting higher and higher, but you can be very smart with it, and that's the opportunity we see for ELECTRA to be smart in the way we purchase and then we sell electricity. And the third way is a part that's usually less controllable, which is the grid connection. And that's really something that I think we have been good at so far in the first years, to be able to build very strong links with the different local distribution network operators, and our size has also helped with that. So we have dedicated key accounts, contact with the different distribution network operators, and we have very close loop to make sure that we can help them forecast the needs that we will have in the future, and that they can help us make sure we can do our business. So that's really one of the aspects that helped us very much in the development in Belgium, and that we are now trying to replicate also in other countries we are active in, like the Netherlands or in Luxembourg.
Yeah, I guess in the Netherlands it's even more important, where there's really gridlock and grid congestions, which are also creeping in on other countries. And that brings a bit on the technical solutions, maybe also what I would call around smart charging and and energy management on site, or power management. So what has been ELECTRA's approach to integrating smart charging and making sure renewable energy solutions in your operations so far?
So far, what we see is that if you look at the energy bill, especially in Belgium, the importance of the power factor versus the energy factor is gaining more and more importance day after day. So whenever you can gain a percentage of peak shaving on your station, it will have a lot of impact on your energy invoices, and it will improve your profitability. Therefore, we are trying now to implement as much as possible battery solutions next to our stations to make sure we can play with that peak shaving, but also potentially in the future, we'll be able to offer ancillary services to the grid. That's, I would say, the major action point we are taking, but there are also other aspects which are sometimes software driven or contractually driven. For example, if I look at Brussels, the way the power contracts are signed with the distribution network operator, you need to announce an amount of power you will expect to have as a max amount. If you are above, you will pay the amount above plus a penalty. If you are below, you will pay the amount you announced. So therefore, there is intelligence in how you will forecast your power, and therefore how it will impact your energy bill. And that's something we try now to focus more and more on.
Yeah, it's a bit like purchase. Yeah, exactly. Kind of hedging somehow. Interesting. How many? Because I think the best so battery energy storage systems topic is of course super exciting, especially for us at Flexecharge. So we're following closely and working on it. So how many have you deployed so far? I guess it's not a secret, right?
Yeah, so far we only have one station in Belgium that has a battery. It's in Antwerp, in Maxim. But the will is there to build more and install more in the coming months. We also do it in a sequence. So we prefer to rather have a station open sooner and add the battery later than having it bottleneck for the whole process and delay the opening of the station. So that's why they come a bit later in the second phase. But that's really something we also want to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was another topic which we discussed when preparing. It was the dynamic prices. What's the state of spot price or dynamic prices in Belgium in general on the energy market for B2C, right? So for end consumers, are they starting to use it at home with their own energy bill? And is it now going also into the charging market, or is it first starting to appear a bit? Where are we in Belgium?
Yeah, so Belgium has a very significant duck curve when it comes to the daily prices. So you can see heavy impact around noon from the sun and the solar production, especially in the summer days, that's impacting the prices negatively. And we see that growing very significantly. So today we are June 6th, and 1 or 2 weeks ago we had the same amount of hours in 2020 of negative hours in 2025 as we had for whole 2024. So we really see a very strong increase in negative prices, and this duck curve getting more and more extreme between the low and the high prices. So a high volatility creating then opportunities for those who can be flexible. We see that in the Flanders, so in the north of Belgium, there are dynamic pricing possibilities for the B2C market, and people are actually getting into it more and more for their houses and trying to then have some flexibility around their consumption habits to match with this duck curve. However, in Brussels and Wallonia, it's very recent. It's only since June 1st, if I'm correct, that those dynamic pricing are being offered. So it's really getting in place right now. So the impact is not yet visible. And also you have two layers. You have one layer, which is the energy price by the energy supplier. And the second layer is the prices of the distribution network operators. So for example, we were discussing last Tuesday with Reza, the distribution network operator of the Liège region, who will be, or is considering actually, the transport to split the transport and distribution costs in 6 different zones in the day. So we'll need to cover both to see what's the best moment. So it's
exactly
getting
two
a bit
variables.
of a tricky, but on the other hand, opportunity for those who can be smart around it.
I mean, if you have deep tech engineers and you have, I'm not worried that there's going to be some good fun for algorithm specialists to work with this, right? It's just makes it more complex, but also a lot of opportunities. And I think, we'll see people, I'm looking forward to see some campaigns, on the sun is shining, go charge now, and I guess that's kind of thing like ice cream, that I push when the sun is shining. So weather-based campaigns, I'm sure you'll do that in your growth marketing. Slightly jokes aside, I was wondering if you also, we talked about a very hot topic of co-location also a lot in Holland, about co-locating with other industries or co-locating with power production. So, could you imagine, have you started to discuss like having a site chosen somewhere on a big on an area where you are close to a motorway and there's space for maybe a solar park? So you're combining yourself with a production of energy. Is it something you've been looking into in Belgium?
So we first focus on finding the right locations for our customers. So we really put the customers first in that sense and make sure that where we are is where it's most easier for them to go. Once we have that, we look in the second step on, okay, how can we now make that work as best as possible? So batteries is part of the solution to grid congestion in the Netherlands. But if not, you then have other possibilities, be it on local production. But it's not the other way around. We don't look first at, okay, there is production or there is high power access, therefore will be a station.
Yeah. Because I heard recently about it's a French CPO who's started to develop its network, and it's really outside of the cities. It's a bit in kind of remote areas, but they are very close to transformer stations, so they have low cost there, and they have a very low cost of land, right? Because they are somewhere, but it requires detours, and it's interesting. There's different business models and opportunities. So of course, it depends how you turn it around. Great. So. Maybe a bit rounding off, looking ahead. So how do you see the Belgian EV charging market evolve from here on in the next few years? And of course, what role will ELECTRA play in this evolution?
Yeah, so I think we are really only at the very beginning when it comes to the EV fleet and also when it comes to ELECTRA. So today we are roughly at 5% of the whole fleet in Belgium that's electric. So there's still 95% that needs to switch. So it's very significant. We expect that by 2030, more or less 1/3 of the cars will be battery electric vehicles in Belgium. So it's times 6 versus what we have now. But still, it's a lot that needs to happen, and it will require a large infrastructure. Today we are number 1. And we aim at remaining so when it comes to the fast charging market. And we really want to keep having this focus on being a pure player on the fast charging market to be able to offer the best services by being focused.
Yeah. And I was thinking, so if we look at the emergent, we talk about passenger vehicles, but what's your take on the emergence of eTrucks and eTrucking in Belgium? As we see, it's, I guess, progressing also very fast, like in the rest of Europe. And does ELECTRA want to play a role in charging those trucks? What's your take?
So the DNA at ELECTRA so far has been really to focus on one segment to make sure we nail it and don't get distracted by other activities. So in the short run, it's really the purpose to keep focusing on cars and not yet on trucks. However, some of our stations are truck compatible, and we are very happy to host trucks as they come. And we might reconsider that strategy in the longer run when we see a higher uptake of trucks.
Makes sense. Very straightforward. Good consultant answer. Very clear. Richard, thank you very much. That's it for today. Looking forward to keeping in touch and following the progress of ELECTRA, Belgium and Netherlands and Luxembourg, and wishing you a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christophe. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Nice. Thank you. Before we continue with the show, I've got to tell you about a masterclass you cannot miss. Our CTO, Robert, dived into local load management and explains how the Gateway local controller delivers rock-solid reliability, keeping the smarts on site for lightning-fast response, effortless peak shaving, and seamless solar battery integration. It's available on demand. Sign up now at flexecharge.com or grab the link in the show notes. And now, back to the show. Moving on to the second conversation in this special episode about the Belgian EV charging market with Kris from TSG Group. Welcome, Kris.
Good morning.
Thank you for taking the time. So as always, I'll start with my question. So can you please tell the audience a bit about your origins story? So what's your background that led you then to the position you are in today?
If I look back, my career started at TSG in the year 2000, so I'm 25 years with the company. Prior to TSG, my career goes back to working in a commercial role for a local oil company. So when I started TSG, it was also within the retail petroleum sector, where I played a local role as a sales engineer in the southern part of Belgium. Over the years, my position grew to a Benelux role, where I played a sales role, a key account manager role for different oil companies. And further on in the career, the management went to the North European countries, where I followed the management, playing a coordinating role, UK, Ireland, the Nordics, the Baltic countries. Till 3-4 years ago, where the local management asked me if I could lead the charge division of TSG Belgium, because at that time, the new energies, mainly the electricity and the charge market, became a hot topic, and the business unit TSG Charge was started in the TSG Group. So I took there the lead, resulting that I'm now today the EV sales manager in Belgium for TSG, looking after all B2B solutions in the AC and the DC market.
Great. Thank you. You definitely, as we discussed in the preparation phase, you have a good perspective on European level, and now with a sharper focus on Belgium. So let's definitely leverage this. So can you, for those who might not know TSG, I think it's pretty well-known 3 letters, but can you walk us through again what is TSG as activity and which role do you play in the mobility space in Belgium?
So for those who do not know TSG is a European group. We are present in more than 30 countries. We have more than 6,000 employees today. As a figure, our annual turnover is around 1.3 billion euros today. Our mission is bringing all kinds of energies to the end customer by offering the right products, including all services and support for these products. Whether it goes from the traditional fuels, like we know them today, the diesels, the gasolines, to all kinds of gas solutions, moving towards the new energies, which are for us the TSG Charge business, the solar business. We are also setting up now the business unit very specifically linked to energy storage solutions. And as TSG, we also have some side activities resulting in business units where they develop all kinds of payment systems for all activities where we are in, and an activity which is mainly linked to car wash for mobility suppliers.
Okay, so a very wide portfolio. So if we hone in, so can you be a bit more specific in detail about, so what's the role of TSG in the e-mobility space in Belgium? What kind of activities are you involved in?
Okay, we offer in Belgium turnkey business-to-business solutions in the TSG Charge market. So what are our core services is from the design of a charging location to the permitting, to the offering of the correct products, going from the AC, the DC chargers, the load management systems, all the civil, all the electrical works. We offer that as a complete package to our end customers. From that moment on, where we have the agreement, we go to the deployment phase. And after the deployment phase, we also offer for all products installed the correct maintenance services to our customers, including the SLAs, which for certain customers are very important.
Yeah, absolutely. We understand that. And can you illustrate a bit what kind of customers, B2B, you're working with to give an idea to the audience?
So in the B2B market, it can be the local KMOs like we know them in Belgium, where they need AC or DC chargers for their own personnel. But we are also very active in the transport and the logistics world, where we offer solutions for our customers who invest in eTrucks, but also those eTrucks needs to be charged. And depending on the needs of the customer, we will help them with the right solutions. Moving to, for example, bus depots, where we offer also the necessary solutions for our bus depot customers. And then besides the bus depots, the eTrucks, the local companies, we are also a very strong installation partner for all the CPOs entering into the Belgian market. Companies like, amongst others, ELECTRA, Fastnet, all these type of CPOs who are entering the market, they need our help with the people in the field offering the right high voltage, medium voltage solutions, the electrical works and the civil engineering.
Yeah. Broad coverage, impressive. So if we look at EV adoption, let's talk more the passenger cars for now, or smaller vehicles in Belgium, which we've been really clearly seeing in the figures, in the statistics, is accelerating. What do you see are some of the key drivers and the barriers to the growth of EV infrastructure in Belgium? You know, what is pushing and what is holding it back?
Yeah, key drivers are clearly the European criteria that they set out for the CO2 reduction, all the, how they call it, the key points that we need to achieve in the, to bring the climate back to a healthy space. If I look very specifically in Belgium, what also has stimulated, because Belgium 3-4 years ago, when we look back 3-4 years ago to the EV market in Belgium, we were worst of Europe. If you look today, Belgium has become almost top 3, top 4, best of class in Europe. And a main driver is that our Flemish government has invested a lot. They have granted a lot of subsidies for people who wanted to invest in AC and DC public. How do you call it? Public charging locations. So if you get a fiscal stimulation from the government, then it was easier for that business to develop in the market, because without fiscal subsidies, it becomes an expensive investment.
I heard also that the Belgian market, if I'm not mistaken, is very strong on company cars.
Yes.
So there's a lot of company cars. Yeah.
If you look at the figures of the company cars, I think in Belgium in total we will have approximately 6 million cars. And if you look at the company cars, we have almost plus minus 1.2 million company cars. So imagine that these are all lease drivers, and that the stimulations from the government towards the companies is that they need to move from traditional fuels to EVs. This brings in Belgium that within this in 3-4 years, only the lease cars will represent 1/5 of the EVs in Belgium. If then the prices of the EVs for the independents, like we call them, of the traditional consumers in the market will become attractive, then we are looking forward to a bright future on EV in Belgium.
Absolutely, yeah. And maybe a few words on the rise of eTrucks. You mentioned that your company is active in this space. So what do you see happening in Belgium in terms of eTrucks, light and medium and heavy transport?
Yeah. What we see in Belgium is that, first of all, we have a regular contact with the different OEMs. We see that the different OEMs, the manufacturers of the eTrucks, that in all domains are starting to invest in very performing eTruck solutions. Also, vehicles for heavy duty. So there's a lot of the development in that. On the other end, we see that on national transport, there are certain criteria, like, for example, communities or cities who do no longer allow diesel vehicles entering into the cities. So that means alternative solutions needs to be developed, where first, a few years ago, it were CNG vehicles entering into the cities, and now we see more and more that electricity-based vehicles are replacing those CNG vehicles. Also on national transport, we see that the TCO of those e-trucks become more and more interesting for people who do national transport. We also see another driver is that certain companies who have done everything to bring their CO2 reduction in place, that they now are asking their suppliers to come with e-trucks when they deliver goods to their premises. So we see all kinds of triggers that starts to drive that e-truck business. The most challenging part in the future will be to have the necessary power available at the locations where those people have to go and charge.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic challenge, which is bringing a lot of opportunity also. So since you have a global European perspective, so if you were to highlight a bit what is specific about the Belgian EV charging landscape compared to other markets, what would you say to compare shortly?
First of all, Belgium is a very typical transfer company. So a lot of people from the UK, they pass by Belgium, transferring through our highways. The Dutch people, when we have transport companies coming from the Nordics, they all pass via Belgium and towards France, Spain, Italy. So we are really what they call a transit country. Mm-hmm. So if I look to the future and going back to the previous question on the e-trucks, Belgium will become also a very important country where charging hubs for e-trucks strategically located. This will be of utmost importance also for Belgium. When we look at the EV charging landscape, We have different DNOs in Belgium. So we have 4 or 5 DNOs today operating Belgium, where compared to other countries, they only have one, or they have much more DNOs. What we also see, what is typically for Belgium, is that the Flemish part is developing quite heavily because of the local, we have 3 governments. So the Flemish government invested a lot in stimulating the EV market in Belgium. We hope that in the next 2-3 years, also the French-speaking or the Wallonian government will do their best to stimulate the charge market in Belgium. So this is a little bit what typically dictates Belgium.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I totally follow you. Okay, so let's come back to a very hot topic you mentioned about the challenges of grid limitations, which definitely is popping on the horizon with the huge deployment happening and more to come. We talk about grid limitation, costly upgrades. So how do you, as a company, currently help your clients to navigate those challenges?
Yeah, the biggest challenges today are, we are not yet in a situation where the Netherlands is, for example, with the net congestion, but we see that also in Belgium. We are very happy with the investment plans that the companies like Elia and Fluvius have on the table. So we see a lot of investments for the next 5 to 6 years. So this is for us encouraging.
So what type of companies are they? Sorry, I didn't know personally those names. Can you just explain?
These are the DNOs and those who manage the grid connections and the infrastructure to get the electricity at the locations. But we heavily depend on their speed of implementation. So when talking to these companies, we see that the challenge at this moment is that a lot of grid connections and then the high power grid connections are requested by the big industries. So that means the more capacity on the power goes to those big companies, the less is available for the smaller companies. So this will be a very big challenge for companies like Elia and Fluvius to manage over the next years. And this will have an impact in the speed of delivering new connections to new potential customers. So this is absolutely a challenge for the Belgium customers and for the CPOs and for those who want to invest in eTrucks.
Yeah. So concretely, how does TSG help its customers to navigate those challenges?
In first instance, for people who consult TSG for their charging activities, we can help them making the connections towards the local DNOs, making the necessary requests to verify what the availability of power is, what the future availability of power could be at their location. We help them in asking the necessary quotes from the DNOs. This is where we facilitate these services for the companies. In the occurrence that customers will need to wait 2, 3, 4 years before a grid connection can be made available, we can offer them solutions to overcome that temporary hurdle by offering them best solutions which are connected then to a low voltage connection, but still ensuring them a kind of DC charging activities, but of course always in a limited space.
Right. And what about dynamic load management solutions? How important is that?
Dynamic load management solutions, they will become very important because, first of all, to protect the connection, but also in Belgium, companies will be charged when they have too high power peaks on their plants. So peak shaving will be a very hot topic. So dynamic load management systems can certainly play a big role there. Also, when people are going to invest in photovoltaic panels, storing the overproduction of energy in local BESS solutions, we do have very specific systems needed, which are specialized in driving all those components and to ensure that energy is optimally used.
Yeah. So today, can you illustrate, I'm curious, can you mention a site, an EV charging site with deployment of a battery? Yeah. What kind of configuration are we looking at? How much kilowatt batteries are we talking about, just to illustrate a bit to our audience?
Okay, so at this moment, we are developing a plant for a local transport company. This transport company will invest or will have delivered 6 eTrucks over the next few weeks. And each eTruck will have a battery capacity of around 600 kilowatt hours. So when you start to look at this type of projects, together with the client, we have decided to put a new high voltage cabin on his space with a 2.5 kVA connection. We advise the client to go with 6 plugs to charge their e-trucks linked to a 600 kilowatt DC charging facility. So he can do overnight charging at 50 to 100 kilowatt per e-truck, but he also, when only one truck is needed, he can benefit from a 100, 200, 300 kilowatt DC charging speed. But at the same time, the customer has a lot of photovoltaic panels on his roof. And due to the fact that he has a high grid connection, we advised him also to invest in a local BESS solution. This BESS solution will on one hand be used for autonomic charging of his e-trucks. So he will benefit from the overproduction of his solar energy, which will be stored in the BESS solution. But on the other hand, due to the current situation in Belgium where there is a net imbalance, he will also use the battery together with energy traders to play a role in buying and selling energy on the market. So to make sure that his return on investment of his battery, will be very short.
Flexibly. Yeah. So that sounds quite future oriented and quite advanced. That's quite exciting to hear. So, because I was about to ask you, how open are Belgian site owners to new charging business models like flexible pricing, peak shaving, flexibility trading? But it sounds like it's maturing, and there are some interesting projects happening, right?
Absolutely, and certainly, and that's what we see in the industry today. That a lot of large grid connections are the demand for high grid connections is increasing very rapidly, and this is mainly because of the economic model today for investments in BESS solutions. But this puts also the DNOs and those who manage the grid connections under a big pressure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yep. So let's go back a little bit in history. Since you have a nice long background in e-mobility, can you give a bit of your perspective on how the market has changed, the EV charging market in Belgium? So how was it 5-6 years ago? How is it changing in terms of speed, deployment, locations, and so on?
If I look at the Belgian market, one of the pioneers on the Belgian market was Fastnet. Fastnet, they first went to the Netherlands. Then we saw the first charging hubs coming into Belgium, which were known under the brand of Fastnet. Now, the developing of the EV market is heavily linked to the introduction of the EV vehicles into the market, where in first instance, the EV market and the sales of EV vehicles was typically for Belgium was the plug-in hybrid solutions. But those plug-in hybrid solutions, they still run on alternative fuels, and they just need an AC slot to charge. But with the changing fiscal climate and the investments from the Flemish government, we saw more and more electrical vehicles entering into the Belgian market, requiring charging solutions. So we saw that in Belgium, a lot of CPOs started to enter into the market, like ELECTRA, Fastnet was developing, but also local oil companies like Gabriel's, like Shell Recharge, like Total Energies. They were all starting to migrating their traditional fuel hubs into charging hubs. So over the past 2-3 years, the combination of more and more EVs being brought on the market in Belgium was closely linked to the development of DC charging hubs in Belgium. And if we see at the number of DC charging hubs today in Belgium, then we see we are one of the best in class in Europe.
Yeah, that's been a fast development. Yeah. Okay, so a clear acceleration of DC chargers and charging hubs. And as you said, company investing in company cars. So I guess also charging at work is also going to be a big way to a major way for people to charge their car.
So this is something what we have seen in Belgium, that a lot of KMOs the local companies, they invested in a few parking spots where they have installed their AC chargers, offering charging services to their local employees and to the people who drive the company cars, so they can charge at the office. And for those where it is possible, they can also charge at home. So this is an economy which is evolving fastly.
Yeah. So looking a bit ahead, where do you see the greatest unmet need in Belgium's EV charging market, right? What is still to be done? What are the unmet needs? So is it still locations missing, some use cases, some business models or pricing models, or technology still missing? What do you see that needs to happen still?
Taking into account the number of EVs which are entering into the Belgian market, I believe 1 out of 10 which is sold in Europe is put on the market in Belgium. So we see that the number of EVs, it goes quickly in Belgium. For CPOs, for people who will develop eTruck hubs in the future, I think Belgium's market, the most challenging one is finding the good locations, which can offer the necessary space, for example, for eTrucks or for public charging, but at the same time also you need to get the grid connection to that location. So I think in Belgium the development of the infrastructure, bringing those grid connections to the correct places and finding the spaces to develop these charging hubs will be one of the most challenging elements in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah. And in terms of future opportunities, has it started? As you see, it's starting to appear that end consumers are offered to do almost flexibility trading at night with their car, right? Or being rewarded by making their car available, for charge discharge, or at least stop charge during the night. Are there some such offers in Belgium from electricity provider or utilities and so on?
I think behind the scenes a lot of elements are preparing. I think car manufacturers are preparing, the manufacturer of AC charging products are preparing themselves. Software is being prepared behind themselves. I also think that the net providers are preparing themselves. So besides 1 or 2 pilots which are run in Belgium, I think that this will become a hot topic over the next 1 to 2 years when all the elements taking part of this ecosystem will come on the market.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you're right. It's hopefully preparing for the perfect storm. Yeah. And I mean, I guess in your neighbor country, right, in the Netherlands, there's been some cases of virtual power plants involving AC chargers and people charging at night, and so to do so-called smart charging, right, to reduce the pressure on the grid at the peak hours. So I'm sure everything is lined up also in Belgium to happen soon. Yeah, exciting to follow. So in looking ahead, so how do you see the role of integrators, I would call companies like TSG, to evolve in as the market mature? What would be the key focus areas and value that you will bring to the market?
For us, the biggest role we play is to offer the end-to-end services to our customers. So ensuring that in all elements and all phases what they have to develop their e-charging hubs, that we can offer all elements within the portfolio. And the most important thing is that when everything is installed, when everything is operational, that when something goes wrong, that they can call us and that they can reach us, and that we put our shoulders under it, and that we also maintain the solution. I think because that's the biggest worry of most of the people.
Yeah, so you're always keeping an eye on what's coming on the market, and you're always ready to cover all the aspects of the end-to-end. Yeah, that's very clear.
I also want to say is that if you look at the path that TSG has walked on over the past 3-4 years, and migrating from traditional fuels to the new energies, if you would consider that TSG has invested in Europe in, I believe, more than 30 acquisitions, but all acquisitions were very specifically in the new energies market. So you will see that we have invested in companies, bringing them to the group, which are specialized in photovoltaic panels, real installation companies really in the electrical work. So we have done more than 30 over the past 3-4 years. So that's
Yeah, very ambitious.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had a word with your colleague François Parnier from TSG Group in Paris recently in the previous episode, for those who want to catch up, at Power to Drive, where he was discussing, we were commenting on those acquisitions and the focus. Yeah, impressive, very ambitious. So as to round up, if you had any advice you'd give to businesses entering the Belgian EV infrastructure market right now, or companies that want to electrify, what would be your piece of advice to them?
My piece of advice would be contact TSG Belgium, and we will bring an answer to all your questions. And we will guide you through the landscape.
Yeah, that's a very clear piece of advice. And I thought maybe you would also talk about secure your grid connection as soon as possible. But that would be the next thing that you would advise them once they call you, right?
That is absolutely the most important thing when you want to develop an e-charging hub today.
Yeah, secure. Yeah, there's be a race. Yeah. All right, Kris. On that word, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being on the ChargePoint podcast today, and I wish you a great day.
I wish you the same.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Christophe.
And that brings us to the end of this episode, exploring Belgium's fast-evolving EV charging market. A huge thank you to my guests, Kris Dierckx from TSG Group and Louis-Charles Mosseray from ELECTRA, for sharing their deep insight and perspective on what's happening on the ground. So, what did we learn? First, Belgium has truly accelerated in the past few years. From being one of Europe's laggards just 3 or 4 years ago, it is now one of the frontrunners, with BEVs representing almost 30% of new car registrations and public charging infrastructure growing at record speed. The key drivers? Strong government incentives, especially in Flanders, and a uniquely high share of corporate leasing, which is spurring the BEV uptake. Second, we heard how Belgium's public charging market is maturing rapidly. Players like ELECTRA are bringing a new level of user experience, reliability, and seamless payment integration adapted to the local specifics, like the use of debit cards, and the need for corporate charging pass compatibility. Third, from Kris at TSG, we gained valuable insights into how Belgium is also a key transit corridor for European freight and logistics companies. This makes the rise of eTrucks and the electrification of truck depots and logistics hubs a big opportunity and a big challenge, as delivering sufficient grid power and fast charging for heavy transport is complex and requires smart energy management. Heard that before? Fourth, both guests highlighted that as the market matures, grid capacity constraints are emerging as a major limiting factor. This means that smart load management, integrating solar and battery storage, and working closely with DNOs or DSOs will be essential for ensuring that both public fast charging and fleet charging can scale in line with demand. And finally, the Belgian market offers important lessons for the rest of Europe. As one of the densest and most complex transport hubs, Belgium is showing that collaboration across public and private players, innovation in user experience, and intelligent grid integration will be key ingredients for a successful EV transition, not just for cars, but increasingly for trucks as well. Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this dive into the Belgian EV and eTruck landscape. If you did, please subscribe, leave us a nice rating, and share the episode with your network. We have more great conversation coming soon, so stay tuned. And as always, drive electric, drive smart.